Welcome to another chilling episode. Tonight we delve into the eerie world of night shift workers who encountered the unimaginable in the basements of their workplaces. These are not just stories, they are true accounts of terror. Imagine the cold, damp air of a basement, the flickering lights casting long, dancing shadows. It's the perfect setting for something sinister to lurk, wouldn't you say? And for the unfortunate souls working the night shift alone in the silence, that terror becomes all too real. Tonight we hear from those who dared to face the darkness. They are the janitors, the security guards, the nurses who found themselves trapped in a nightmare, hunted by unseen forces in the bowels of buildings long since abandoned by the light of day. Our first story takes us to a bustling city hospital, a place where life and death walk hand in hand. But beneath the sterile halls and the constant hum of medical equipment lies a chilling secret. This is the story of Thomas, a veteran janitor who had seen his fair share of unsettling things during his late-night shifts. Thomas was no stranger to the eerie silence of the hospital basement. He had grown accustomed to the distant hum of the generator, the echoing drip of a leaky pipe, the feeling that he was utterly alone. But tonight was different. Tonight, the air felt heavy, thick with an unseen dread. He had just finished cleaning the staff break room, a cramped space tucked away in a forgotten corner of the basement. As he pushed his cart down the narrow corridor, the fluorescent lights above began to flicker, casting the hallway in a disorienting strobe effect. He stopped, his hand instinctively reaching for the heavy-duty flashlight on his belt. Just old wiring, he muttered to himself, hoping to quell the unease creeping up his spine. As he continued his rounds, a prickling sensation at the back of his neck told him he was not alone. He paused again, slowly turning his head to scan the corridor behind him. It was empty, but the feeling of being watched intensified. A cold sweat beaded on his forehead. He tried to rationalize it away, blaming the flickering lights and his overactive imagination, but deep down, a primal fear told him otherwise. Rounding a corner, he thought he saw a fleeting movement at the edge of his vision. He whipped his head around, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. "Nothing, get a grip, Tom," he whispered, his voice trembling slightly. He picked up his pace, eager to finish his rounds and escape the oppressive atmosphere of the basement. But as he passed the entrance to the old morgue, a cold gust of wind slammed into him, chilling him to the bone. The flashlight tumbled from his grasp, clattering against the concrete floor and plunging him into absolute darkness. Panic surged through him as he fumbled for the flashlight, his heart pounding against his ribs. He finally found the flashlight and flicked it on, the beam dancing across the walls as his hand shook. That's when he saw it. At the end of the hall, a tall, shadowy figure stood partially concealed in the darkness. It was tall and slender, its form shifting and swirling like smoke. Two pinpricks of light glowed menacingly where its eyes should have been. Frozen in terror, Thomas could only stare as the figure began to glide towards him, its movements eerily silent. Our next tale takes us to the desolate outskirts of a small town, where a lone security guard named Mark patrolled the abandoned textile factory on the edge of town. The factory, once a bustling hub of activity, now stood as a skeletal reminder of a bygone era, its windows like vacant eyes staring out at the world. Mark had taken the job because, frankly, no one else wanted it. Locals whispered tales of the factory being cursed, haunted by the spirits of workers who had met untimely ends within its walls. But Mark, a pragmatic man with a family to feed, dismissed these stories as nothing more than superstition. He would soon learn, however, that some legends are rooted in terrifying truth. It was during his third week on the job, on a night thick with fog and foreboding, that Mark encountered something he couldn't explain. Armed with only a flashlight and a thermos of coffee, he made his rounds, the sound of his own footsteps echoing eerily through the vast empty space. He had just checked the locks on the main loading bay when he heard it. a faint scratching sound coming from the depths of the factory basement. He paused, his hand hovering over the heavy maglite on his belt. He listened intently, but the sound had stopped. Probably just rats, he muttered to himself, though his voice sounded thin and far away in the silence. He tried to dismiss the noise, but an unsettling feeling gnawed at his gut. His instincts told him something wasn't right. Against his better judgment, he found himself drawn toward the source of the sound, a heavy steel door at the far end of the loading bay, rusting on its hinges. The air grew noticeably colder as he approached the door. He could feel a faint vibration beneath his feet, a low hum that seemed to emanate from the basement below. He took a deep breath and gripped the cold metal handle. It was locked, but the scratching sound started again, louder this time, more insistent. Mark leaned closer to the door, pressing his ear against the cold steel. The scratching was joined by a low, guttural growl, sending chills down his spine. He jumped back, his heart pounding against his ribs. He fumbled for his radio, his fingers trembling. "Base, this is Unit 12. Do you copy?" he said, his voice tight with apprehension. Static. He was alone. He took a step back from the door, his hand hovering over his flashlight. He knew he should just leave, report the strange sounds to his supervisor in the morning. But morbid curiosity, a desire to prove the local legends wrong, kept him rooted to the spot. He took a deep breath and gave the door a powerful kick. It didn't budge. He kicked again, harder this time, and the rusty hinges finally gave way with a deafening screech. The door swung inward, revealing a staircase that descended into darkness. Mark hesitated for a moment, then flicked on his flashlight and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and the silence was almost deafening. He took a tentative step down the stairs, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the gloom. The scratching sound grew louder with each step, and it was now punctuated by a series of heavy thumps, as if something large was pacing back and forth just beyond the reach of his light. His hand trembled as he gripped the flashlight tighter, his heart threatening to burst out of his chest. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he was met with a sight that made his blood run cold. Standing in the center of the basement, bathed in the eerie glow of his flashlight, was a figure he could only describe as otherworldly. It was tall and skeletal, its skin stretched tautly over its bones. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, and its long, sharp fingers ended in claws that scraped against the concrete floor. Our final story brings us to the quiet halls of a secluded nursing home where a young nurse named Sarah faced a different kind of horror, a pervasive, unseen presence that seemed to watch her every move. Sarah was new to the night shift, her youthful optimism a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere of the aging building. She had heard whispers among the staff about strange occurrences and the feeling of being watched, but she had brushed them off as overactive imaginations. One stormy night, however, Sarah's skepticism would be shattered. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows of the old Victorian house. Rain lashed against the glass, casting eerie shadows across the walls. She had just finished checking on the residents, a sense of unease settling over her. The usual hushed sounds were replaced by an unsettling silence, broken only by the creaking of the old house. As she reached the stairwell, a cold gust of wind slammed the door shut, extinguishing the flickering light bulb. She gasped, her hand flying to her chest as her heart pounded. Plunged into darkness, she fumbled for her penlight, her fingers trembling. The air grew colder, and Sarah could have sworn she felt a faint touch on her shoulder, like icy fingers. She spun around, her penlight beam cutting through the darkness, but there was nothing there. "Just the wind," she whispered, her voice shaking despite her attempt at reassurance. But deep down, a primal fear began to coil in her stomach. She had heard the stories, the whispers of a presence that haunted the nursing home. With a deep breath, she hurried down the stairs, her penlight casting long, distorted shadows. As she reached the bottom, she noticed the basement door was ajar, darkness beckoning her closer. An unexplainable pull drew her towards the basement door. It was as if something was calling to her from the shadows. She hesitated, her better judgment battling against an overwhelming sense of dread and curiosity. Finally, she took a deep breath and pushed the door open, her penlight illuminating the dust-covered steps. The air was thick with mildew and decay, broken only by the drip of water from a leaky pipe. Sarah took a tentative step inside, her penlight beam dancing across old medical equipment. As she ventured deeper, she couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The hair on her neck stood on end, every creak amplified tenfold. Suddenly, she heard a soft whisper from the far end of the basement. It was faint, but it sent chills down her spine. She froze, her blood turning to ice. She strained to hear, but the whisper had faded into silence. She took a step back, her hand reaching for the call button. Her penlight flickered and died, plunging her into darkness. Panic washed over her as she fumbled for the penlight. Just as she turned it back on, a cold, clammy hand clamped down on her wrist. She gasped, dropping the penlight as she struggled to break free. It felt like the hand of a corpse, cold and lifeless, yet strong. She screamed, her voice echoing through the basement, but she knew no one would hear her. She was trapped, alone in the darkness with something she couldn't see, something savoring her fear. If you enjoyed these spine-chilling stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more terrifying tales. And remember, sometimes the scariest things are the ones we can't see. The basements of the world hold countless secrets, some best left undisturbed. For those who work the night shift, alone in the darkness, these secrets have a way of revealing themselves, often in the most terrifying ways imaginable. So the next time you find yourself in the basement, listen closely. You never know what might be lurking just beyond the reach of the light, waiting for the perfect moment to make itself known. Sweet dreams.